So the following video is a working session where I'll be making some engineering decisions and thinking out loud, and I will be collaborating with AI on this. I hope to be making more of these type of videos, not just on engineering, but also in design and decision making on the product in general, and I hope you like it. We will be adding the ability to drag around all of these different items on your workspace. This is what the app currently looks like. And this will be focused on code, but I won't be getting too much into the details. We'll be coding with the help of AI, and we'll be adding this functionality along the way. This screen here is on this file called new grid, and I am using this container called reordable for each. So I've already validated that this works somewhat. The idea is to bring this into the main app that actually exists and actually works. Let's start with that. And as we're going with this approach, let me just show you what the code for this guy is. This is what I'm internally calling the flow view, and this is just called the new grid. So I'm just going to open this to the side. I'm going to go to flow view. So as you can see here, we basically have a similar structure. We have a lazy V grid, which effectively allows you to set up a grid in different ways. We'll be eventually moving towards a layout that looks like this, but for now I want to start making progress and I want to bring the functionality into the flow view, into the existing version of the app. So in this case, we're going to tell AI to basically bring this into here. Obviously we can do that ourselves. But the idea is that I don't want to kind of like think too much about all of the different steps to accomplish that. And we're going to be building on top of that as we go. So let me just open Composer in this case. I already started prompt here. So saying, using new grid as an example, how may you modify flow view to support drag and drop? And I'm just hinting it at the view that we're going to be using. I originally included additional instructions, but I'm actually going to remove that for now. We're going to just focus on bringing that functionality, and then we'll add how we persist this data across different sessions. So what Cursor does in this case, it's creating like a PR effectively. It's creating a set of changes. You can see that it's starting to add the corresponding state. It's getting that as a hint from how it's done in a new grid. In this case, there should be like an active item or something like that. I believe we just call it item here, but what it's proposing is that we call it active block. Doesn't matter to me. So we're just going to accept these changes and we're going to see what that looks like. We're getting some failures. Let's see what this looks like. Oh, I see that we didn't accept all the changes. So let's go back to this. It's complaining about additional issues here. Let's take a look. I honestly don't think that we need to do this just yet. We will. There is a method to persist that we already have. Let's not persist or make changes to the blocks yet. Just tell me what it would do. And it's basically saying, all right, we're not going to make any changes to the block model pretty much. So let's accept that. So right off the bat, it's already draggable. See, it's having this preview initially, and it's telling us what it would do, right? It's basically logging different positions. Whoops. And this is kind of what we wanted. Now, let's add a state that we can use to keep track of the order of blocks. Let's see how it interprets that. I'm honestly very intrigued by this method. I did not think about it too much, but let's see. All we're doing is creating a derived array of the blocks, and the blocks is just basically what gets fetched when we're loading the view. And then we are composing a final array that is used to actually render them. So at this point in time, I'm going to instruct it to actually persist the changes for all of these blocks so that whenever we open the app again, we will be using the new positions. I already have something like this that it's a little bit old, but it sort of works. I've created in the past, and let's see if it can just incorporate that, right? All we have to do is tag that particular file. can we use the method in drag provider to persist the new positions of the blocks that we're dragging. All right, so now we're going to save and let's run that again. Now we're getting this error. No observable object. Right. I don't think we have a model being passed yet, so let's actually kill this for now. I don't actually think that we need to use an environment object. It just did that, but let's change it to be, can we use the shared block view model? And then we can basically reference the actual file so it knows kind of what I'm talking about. Block view model. We use the shared block view model here. All right. Instead of an environment object. It should be simpler. Let's take a look and see if that works. Now we're getting a different error, it looks like. So this method is old, so there are some things that I don't need anymore. This actually doesn't make much more sense. All we want to do is to persist this, right? This is what I think is really interesting about AI, and we're about to see it, hopefully. But basically, this block view model originally was controlling the blocks as a state that would be in that flow view. Now the flow view just receives blocks and doesn't care where they're coming from, and I prefer to code in that way. But the logic, the business logic here is more or less correct. There are some considerations that I took when I originally made this. So what we need to do is to basically modify it so that it works with any given set of blocks. And if anything, this no longer needs to live under a block view model. The block view model itself, as you can see here, is deprecated. I'm just reusing some of that logic. And rather than having to do this myself, I can just ask Cursor to figure that out for me. It seems like block view model in method, what are we calling this method? Reorder block in drag provider. Let's just say this again. Drag provider is referencing self blocks, which we no longer need. Instead, we should keep the business logic, but apply it more agnostically. How may you suggest that we apply it so that it works well with flow view? See, so now it's modifying it so that it takes an arbitrary set of blocks. And not only that, it already moved it away from, it's basically ignoring the block view model entirely. And that's kind of what we want. So we're going to save that. By the way, same thing here, drag provider, I don't think I'm using it anymore. I don't remember exactly what the point of it was initially, but it's where I'm saving that file. So let's take a look and see if that makes it better. Or most importantly, let's see if it persists. Okay, now it's basically complaining that this is too complex. Let me comment this out and see if it complains about this specifically. Typically, when I'm compiling Swift, if I'm seeing a lot of complexity in this, it begins to complain that there's that we need to kind of like simplify the structure. We could even put it in a single function here, something, and we can see index set, I think is what it's called, to 0 or something like that. Let's see if this somehow brings any errors. Yeah, see? The navigation path has no member room ID. I'm struggling to see why we would need that. I think what we want to do, and I'll explain that in a second, can we modify how we're accessing path room ID based on the correct enum. I think we're calling this navigation path so that it understands better how that works. Perfect. So we're already giving it, we're already modifying navigation path so it works better here. Cool. So this now seems to work. We can navigate across, and it's, at least in this session, it seems to be working. So let's just refresh it and see if that works or not. Let's take a look again. Let me just hide this too, so it's a little bit easier. Let's move this here. It seems to be working. Let me add a note here so it's a little bit easier to keep track. So I added a note. The order is actually surprising. Whoops. Index out of range. So I think what we want to do now is, so just so that you understand, the way the navigation works in the app is a few different ways. So let me open the app again so you can kind of understand a little bit better. So we basically have different paths. They are effectively scopes, right? Everything will literally get all types of cards, notes, images, links from different places. Notes will just be notes, bookmarks, links, etc. And then rooms are effectively something like folders where you can categorize these different types of items. Same thing happens here. Each navigation path has like a type of, and there's also trash, which is self-explanatory. They also include how they query things. So you can see that for everything we don't care about the type. It definitely should be something that we haven't trashed yet. Same thing for notes. And then for rooms, we're also excluding items that are not part of that parent, right? And then the sort descriptors is what I'm actually the most interested in. I want to make sure that we're sorting by the correct positions. So the block model, which is basically what powers each of these items, will have either a position, which is how we handle things like rooms. You can also sort at the everything level, and that basically means sorting inside of everything here. So what I've used in the past to debug is to have something at the top that tells me basically the position. I don't know if I still have that. Let me see. So let's do this. Let's restart the app. So we're basically going to be showing the position to see what's going on. So right off the bat, I don't think we're actually sorting by position. As you can see, this should have been at the very beginning, but somehow we're showing it is an ascending position so that it goes from smaller to larger, right? So what we want to do is we want to make sure that they're sorted correctly. So right, it's like 35 goes to 30, and then it goes to 32, and then it goes to 31. So this is actually incorrect. We can actually ask cursor here, navigation path, can we ensure that we are sorting blocks correctly per block query? I'm not seeing, for example, then that in a room we are sorted by block position in ascending order. We must be missing something. Nope. So let's take a look at navigation path. So this is what we changed. But also let's double check that we're using this fetch request correctly. I think this might be it. I think this is somehow being impacted. So let me actually copy this and paste it here. I'm pretty sure I know what's going on, but we'll see. Okay, so if we go to room, it's not that much better. So let's refresh now. Yeah, we're still not persisting. Oh my god. What about ordered blocks and flow view? Could this be screwing things up or undoing the desired order. Can we undo the changes in navigation? The sort changes in navigation path, and blog query. Same thing on content view. Yep. I don't think this is going to work because or it might work, but it's might create some performance issues, or it might just be a little bit choppy because of how we're eventually rendering those blocks, but we'll see. Yeah, this is basically not doing anything. The sorting is still messed up, so I'm not quite sure that we actually fixed the issue. Yeah, so by default, we're going to be fetching everything, right? Basically this mode. But then when navigation path changes, actually, let's take a look at something. Let's go to block debugger and let's change this to be root position. I have an inkling here. Never mind. It doesn't seem like we're sorting by root position either. So I'm actually going to pretend that we don't have this, and I want to verify something. Okay, so this is the order that we actually want. If it's ascending, it's going to go from smaller to larger. So it's going to start at the largest number, and then as soon as you add more stuff, so more stuff, this is going to be a smaller number than that one, right? Obviously, we can move right now. If I turn this into reorderable for each, this seems to be working okay. So I'm actually tempted to not be... So I'm just not convinced that this is working correctly. And I think because of that, we're getting these weird orders. So here's what we want. We basically don't want to modify the data as we're dragging. And by the data, I mean the actual persisted data, because that's going to cause a lot of unnecessary saving cycles that, it's going to like hinder performance. We want to modify them locally, meaning like in a local state, which is like more fluid and more smoother. And then after that, we want to persist. So let's modify flow view macOS so that blocks are stored in a state and the state is updated when we reorder. Separately, let's call block move to persist as a task. Not quite convinced that this is the best, but let's take a look regardless. Yeah, we don't actually need to pass blocks, I don't think. And yeah, why would flow need fetched blocks? I see. What are we changing it from? We're just calling them blocks. So let's refresh to see if those are persisting correctly. This one should show up first. I'm not quite sure that it is actually persisting, but let's see. At least it's not broken. Let's see if I if I switch to my room. Yep, I should be getting only the blocks that I want. And we stop calling drag provider reorder blocks altogether and have a business logic that will place the block, that will update the block position based on the final index. If the final index if the final index is 0, we will grab the latest block available position and subtract 1. If the block index is greater than 0, then we will grab the blocks before and after it and place and make the position be in the middle of that. Example, block position equals, I don't know, this, and block position equals 2 this, then the dragged block dropped in block 1 position will be 234.5. If the block is the only block, then it will receive the position, the default position from block model, I believe is what I decided. We also don't need to call block move anymore. Okay, let's review the logic. Yeah, so if there's well, actually, this doesn't make sense because the blocks that we're passing would already include the block. Block update position is flawed given that blocks would always include the current block, would usually include the moved block inside of blocks. Correct? Sure, I mean, this works. Let's update that. Well, let's actually take a look. Block model. Guessing this is the new stuff. Okay. So blocks without moved, then the position is just going to be at next position, and then we're going to be passing the parent ID. That makes sense. If it's 0, then the position is going to be whatever the current one is, contextual position. I don't know where we're getting that from. Oh, okay. Nice. It actually understood this. That was cool. Yeah, I didn't even reference this, by the way. This just, it understood where to get it from. But that is absolutely correct. We do want to get the contextual position based on the parent ID. Then it's going to be -1. That makes sense. Then if it's the index is more than it's at the end, basically, that makes sense. Then it will add 1 more. Yep. This all makes sense. And then it decides which property is actually going to modify. It's in between. It's going to get the average of the two. Yep. Okay. I think this is actually what we want. I think this should just be a float. This will not immediately reflect those changes, I believe. All right, let's first test what this will look like on a room. So we want this guy to be first, which is not persisting the way that we want to. The local array is working correctly, but it's not persisting that way that it's supposed to. Something that we can do is in the block debugger, instead of doing all of this, we're going to be showing the ID of the block. And then we're going to be logging the final position here. So block position, and then we can say block ID. And then I like to add this live thing here because it always makes it easier to filter my logs accordingly. See, now we can actually see what's going on here. And if I move this here, this is the interesting part. The block that I just dragged is not at all the one that is actually being moved. See this? I'm moving this. And the ones that actually got modified are not the one that I just moved, which makes no sense. Let's double check at the logic of flow view. Okay, so flow view, macOS. This is fine. Yeah, what even is the move block? I think drag block makes most sense. I don't know why it's actually doing the other one. Let's ask it. Why are we using moved block in flow view versus dragged block? All right, let's accept that. So now it is absolutely the one that we're dragging, which is good. And if I move this here, it is the correct block that I'm moving. And it now seems to be working. Boom. let's go back, come back. Let's add a new block. I'm going to refresh, and now it seems to be working. Nice. Now let's go back to the block debugger, and let's change this to be the position again, just to make sure that we're saving this correctly. So if I move this here, see, we can already see the new position being updated here instantly. If I move this here, it already goes in between the two of them. I cannot stress enough how cool this is. When I first came up with this logic a long time ago, I had to figure out the logic around it, but now I just had to explain it to Cursor in a way that made more sense to me, it's natural language, and it came up with a logic that made the most sense. I still had to correct some things, but really cool to see how quickly this got done. Now, let's see if the rest works. I don't know if I am getting this same effect here, but we can confirm. If I refresh on everything, I should still see the new order that I came up with, which I actually can't tell. Let's double check. So we basically should have this painting, this runes painting again. Yeah, so it works for rooms, but it doesn't seem to work for the everything tab. And we can figure out what's going on there. So let's go back to block debugger. Let's double check root position. So it is coming up with the right position here. As you can see, if I were to sort these again, whoa, I don't know what happened there, but let's move this back here. 85, 86, 86 with a little bit more, and then 87, right? And if I go back and come back, it is the correct order. However, and also I guess we can literally take a screenshot and paste it in the tool itself so that we can reference it in a second. So if I refresh, these were the numbers that we had. And also, yeah, we were having this, and this. 85.633. And this basically just went away, which is very interesting. Yeah, like this particular position is not even here anymore. It's down here. So this order is actually incorrect. I think that because the order that we're starting with is not correct, we're not getting the right location sorted out, right? Because we're working with indices. We're not working with the actual positions that we have. So now we're running into this error or this issue where everything is sorted correctly here, right? It goes from like the smallest to the largest, or so it was. I'm now seeing that we have the exact same problem again. Let me just take a screenshot here, paste it in here so we can reference it. Let's refresh. So the order is still good, or at least the perceived order. Oh, right. Never mind. We're rendering root position. So of course this is not going to be correct. So it only makes sense here. I got tripped up for a little bit. Okay. So the problem then is the navigation path, I guess, is not getting the right order. So it must be block query. It starts with a root position like this. And then on content view, we are getting this fetch request, and this fetch request is composed of whatever we are getting from the query. Oh, see, this is the problem. We should be using query sort descriptors. Now, this was an error a bug that we introduced when we were iterating with Cursor. Okay, so now we should be having the correct order, as you can see. And then if I reorder, then I should be getting the updated values properly. So then again, I'm going to take another screenshot because why not? And I'm going to paste it. And if I refresh, I should keep all of those positions intact. So we have 84, 85, 85, 85. Now this 85 seems to be going from the largest to the smallest, which is interesting. But then it is sorting correctly at the numerical value. I must be missing something there. But in terms of the order, it is correct. I'm just very interested in this development here. Let's check this. So how does core data handle sorting via floats? Really? I don't even know if that would work, but if that's what it suggests, we can give it a shot. It certainly doesn't hurt. This is actually funny because it seems to be working better now. But this is only, we only really changed, yeah, we only changed this, the update position function. It must be transitory. Let me just refresh again and see if that works. All right, so let's just refresh. But yeah, we have successfully brought back some functionality that I used to have here. So now I'm going to ship it, honestly. I mean, this doesn't really, let's review our changes so far. This is especially important when working with AI. Just want to make sure that all of the changes that we made make sense. Yeah, all of this is coming from Xcode. When I saved, I have some linter. Most important thing is that we're passing the fetched blocks, but the actual blocks will be at the right state, and that's important, and it's going to get reset every time that we have new fetch blocks. And that happens when we appear, and also when the fetch blocks count changes. This is a little bit, I'm not quite comfortable with this. I may need to figure a better solution because it will only appear once. In fact, we might even try to break it now. Okay, so we'll just make a new room, something, and then something 2. So if I have block uno, and then we have block dos, and I switch between these two, see what's going on? We have the same block being repeated in both places because it's the same object, right? I think then if I wanted to change this to be flow, so one way to solve it is to basically saying, hey, let's just say that fetch blocks changes completely every time that it changes. Unfortunately, this is not equatable, and we don't have any properties that we can reference from fetch results, I don't think. It's not equatable. We don't have access to really anything that we can use to compare to. I mean, I guess technically the predicate is maybe the predicate would work actually, is a better way of keeping track of identity in this case. Because if the predicate changes, then effectively everything changes. So let's see if we can just use NS predicate here. And let's try to run that. This works a little bit better. I'm not the most comfortable about it. This could still have issues if we have different sorting options. You can technically have two contexts inside of flow view that have the same predicate but with different sorting. I still feel like this is good enough for now. We'll keep iterating on it, and if we run into that same issue, it will work. But yeah, I think this works for now. So that gets out of the way. This logic, honestly, same type of rationale. Let's make sure that it works over time. For now, it seems to be working correctly. Whoops, we definitely need to get rid of the manual override of block debugger. So I'm just going to change this back to, or actually just don't need to do anything. Drag provider. I think drag provider just doesn't need to exist anymore. We can probably just delete drag provider. What else is using it? Let's take a look. Drag provider. We were using drag provider actually to keep track of the drag block. That was so that this variable for each, which I'm providing some credits to the guy who came up with it on the description, it has a container definition in which you need to pass the active. This allows for you to kind of, when you drag outside of the container, it will cancel out the ordering. Right now, if I do this, for example, it stays invisible, right? If I come back, it's still like the same. I think that's something that we need to come back to fix, but I still want to validate the functionality in production, or at least in my beta. But at the very least, I think we can get rid of the other stuff from drag provider. I mean, drag provider is basically just literally the dragging block that we're keeping track of. We've also added this convenient room ID, which is a little bit easier to read. It already handles basically all of the casing here, so you don't have to do this manually inside of the consumer. You're just doing that as an extension of the enum, which is a very nice feature from Swift. So I'm comfortable shipping this for now and then coming back to it later. So re-add dragging functionality, or let's just call it reordering functionality, commit, sync. Well, what's cool about this is that under the hood, I'm actually integrating with Xcode Cloud. So this is going to automatically make a build. I will meet you guys when that's ready. Thank you, Rolando from the past. For you guys in the present, consider subscribing. I will be making more videos like this. And if you have any feedback or questions, feel free to drop them below.